Hello and welcome to The Essential Reads. My name is Isaac and my goal is to bring to you a bunch of classic audiobooks in an easy and accessible way. We are continuing with North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, and this is chapter 36. Union, Not Always Strength. The steps of the bearers, heavy and slow. The sobs of the mourners, deep and low. Shelley. At the time arranged the previous day, they set out on their walk to see Nicholas Higgins and his daughter. They were both reminded of their recent loss by a strange kind of shyness in their new habiliment, and the fact that it was the first time for many weeks that they had deliberately gone out together. They drew very close to each other in unspoken sympathy. Nicholas was sitting by the fireside in his accustomed corner, but he had not his accustomed pipe. He was leaning his head upon his hand, his arm resting on his knee. He did not get up when he saw them, though Margaret could read the welcome in his eye. Sit ye down, Fire's welly out, he said, giving it a vigorous poke, as if to turn attention away from himself. He was rather disorderly, to be sure, with a black, unshaven beard of several days' growth, making his pale face look yet paler, and a jacket which could have been all the better for patching. We thought we should have a good chance of finding you just after dinner time, said Margaret. We have had our sorrows, too, since we saw you, said Mr. Hale. Aye. Sorrows is much more plentiful than dinners just now. I reckon my dinner hour stretches all over the day. You're pretty sure of finding me. Are you out of work? Asked Margaret. Aye, he replied shortly. Then, after a moment's silence, he added, looking up for the first time, I'm not wanting brass, don't you think it? Bless poor lass. I'd a little stock under her pillow, ready to slip into my hand last moment. And Mary is fustian cutting, but I'm out of work at the same. We owe Mary some money, said Mr. Hale, before Margaret's sharp pressure on his arm could arrest the words. If who takes it, I'll turn her out of doors. I'll bide inside these four walls, and she'll bide out. That's all. But we owe her many thanks for her kind service, began Mr. Hale again. I'm ne'er thanking your daughter there for her deeds of love to my poor wench. I ne'er could find the words. I'll have to begin to try now, if you start making a do about what little Mary could salve you. Is it because of the strike that you're out of work? Asked Margaret gently. Strike's ended. So, for this time, I'm out of work because I ne'er asked for it. I ne'er asked for it because good words is scarce, and bad words is plentiful. He was in a mood to take a surly pleasure in giving answers that were like riddles. But Margaret saw he would like to be asked for the explanation. And good words are? Asking for work. I reckon them's almost the best words that a man can say. Gimme work means, and I'll do it like a man. Them's good words. And bad words are refusing you work when you ask for it. Ah. Bad words is saying, aha, fine chap, you've been true to your order, and you'll be true to mine. You did the best you could for them as wanted help. That's your way of being true to your kind. And I'll be true to mine. You've been a poor fool as knowed no better nor to be a true faithful fool. So go and be damned to you. There's no work for you here. Them's bad words. I'm not a fool. And if I was, for God had taught me how to be wise after their fashion. I could map and have learned, if anyone tried to teach me. Would it not be worthwhile, said Mr. Hale, to ask your old master if he would take you back again? It might be a poor chance, but it would be a chance. He looked up again with a sharp glance at the questioner, and then tittered in a low and bitter laugh. Master. If it's no offence, I'll ask you a question or two in my turn, You're quite welcome, said Mr. Hale. I reckon yon some way of earning your bread. Folks seldom live in Milton just for pleasure, if they can live anywhere else. You are quite right. I have some independent property, but my intention in settling in Milton was to become a private tutor. To teach folk? Well, I reckon they pay you for teaching them, don't they? Yes, replied Mr. Hale, smiling. I teach in order to get paid. And then that pays you, doesn't they tell you what'n to do or what'n not to do with the money they gives you in just payment for your pains, in fair exchange like? No, to be sure not. They dunna say, you may have a brother, or a friend as dear as a brother, who wants this here brass for a purpose both you and he thinks right, but you mun promise not to give it to him. You may see a good use as you think to put your money to, but we don't think it good. And so if you spend it in a theatre, we'll just leave off dealing with you. They dunna say that, dun they? No, to be sure not. Would you stand it if they did? It would be some very hard pressure that would make me even think of submitting to such dictation. There's not the pressure on all the broad earth that would make me, said Nicholas Higgins. Now you got it. You've hit the bullseye. Ampers, that's where I worked, makes their men pledge themselves they'll not give a penny to help the union or to keep turnouts from clemming. They may pledge and make pledge, continued he scornfully, but they nobbut make liars and hypocrites. And that's a less sin, to my mind, to make men's hearts so hard they'll not do a kindness to them as needs it, or help on the right and just cause, though it goes again the strong hand. But I'll ne'er forswear myself for all the work the king could give me. I'm a member of the union, and I think it's the only thing to do the workmen any good. And I've been a turnout, and I know what it was to clem. So if I get a shilling, 6pence shall go to them if they axe it from me. Consequence is, I dunna see where I'm to get a shilling. Is that rule about not contributing to the unions in force at all the mills? Asked Margaret. I cannot say. It's a new regulation at ours, and I reckon they'll find that they cannot stick to it. But it's in force now. By and by they'll find out. Tyrants makes liars. There was a little pause. Margaret was hesitating whether she should say what was in her mind. She was unwilling to irritate one who was always gloomy and despondent enough. At last it came out. But in her soft tones, and with her reluctant manner, showing that she was unwilling to say anything unpleasant, it did not seem to annoy Higgins, only to perplex him. Do you remember poor Boucher saying that the union was a tyrant? I think he said it was the worst tyrant of all. And I remember, at the time, I agreed with him. It was a long while before he spoke. He was resting his head on his 2 hands and looking down into the fire, so she could not read the expression on his face. I'll not deny but what the union finds it necessary to force a man into his own good. I'll speak the truth. A man leads a dree life who's not in the union. But once in the union, his interests are taken care on the better nor he could do it for himself, or by himself, for that matter. It is the only way working men can get their rights, by joining all together. More the members, more chance for each one separate man having justice done him. Government takes care of fools and madmen, and if any man is inclined to do so for himself, or his neighbour a hurt, it puts a bit of a check on him, whether he likes it or no. That's all we do in the union. We can't clap folk into prison, but we can make a man's life so heavy to be borne that he's obliged to come in, and be wise and helpful in spite of himself. Butcher were a fool all along, and ne'er a worse fool than at the last. He did you harm? Asked Margaret. Ah, that he did. We had public opinion on our side till he and his sort began rioting and breaking laws. It were all over with the strike then. Then would it not have been far better to have left him alone and not forced him to join the union? He did you no good and you drove him mad. Margaret, said her father in a low and warning voice, for he saw the cloud gathering on Higgins' face. I like her, said Higgins suddenly, who speaks plain out what's in her mind, who doesn't comprehend the Union for all that. It's a great power. It's our only power. I read a bit of poetry about a plough going over a daisy as made tears come into my eyes, afore I'd other cause for crying. But the chap ne'er stopped driving the plough, as warrant, for all he was pitiful about the daisy. He'd too much of mother wit for that. The Union's the plough, making ready the land for harvest time. Such as Boucher, 'twould be setting him up too much to liken him to a daisy. He's liker a weed lounging over the ground. Mun just made up their mind to be put out of the way. I'm sore vexed with him just now, so m'appen I dunna speak him fair. I could go over him with a plough myself for all the pleasure in life.
Why? What has he been doing? Anything fresh?
To be sure, he's ne'er out of mischief, that man. First all, he must go raging like a mad fool and kick up yon Riot. Then he'd go into Arden, where he'd been yet, if Thornton had followed him out as I hoped he'd done. But Thornton, having got his own purpose, didn't care to go on with the prosecution for the Riot, so Butcher slunk back again to his house. He ne'er showed himself abroad for a day or two. He had that grace. And then where think ye he went? Why to Hampers? Damn him. He went with his mealy-mouthed face that turns me sick to look at, asking for work, though he knowed well enough the new rule of pledging themselves to give naught the Union, not to help the starving turnout. Why, he'd a clemmed to death if the Union had not helped him in his pinch. There he went, ussin to promise aught and pledge himself to aught, to tell all he knowed on our proceedings, the good-for-nothing Judas. But I'll say this for Hamper, and thank him for it at my dying day. He drove Butcher away, and would not listen to him, ne'er a word, though folk standing by says the traitor cried like a babby.
Oh, how shocking! How pitiful!
Exclaimed Margaret.
Higgins, I don't know you today. Don't you see how you've made Butcher what he is by driving him into the Union against his will, without his heart going with it? You have made him what he is.
Made him what he is? What was he? Gathering along the narrow street came a hollow, measured sound, now forcing itself onto their attention. Many voices were hushed and low. Many steps were heard, not moving onwards, at least not with any rapidity or steadiness of motion, but as if circling round one spot. Yes, there was one distinct, slow tramp of feet which made itself a clear path through the air and reached their ears. The measured, laboured walk of men carrying a heavy burden. They were all drawn towards the house door by some irresistible impulse, impelled thither, not by a poor curiosity, but as if by some solemn blast. 6 men walked in the middle of the road, 3 of them being policemen. They carried a door taken off its hinges upon their shoulders, on which lay some dead human creature. And from each side of the door there were constant droppings. All the street turned out to see, and seeing, to accompany the procession, each one questioning the bearers, who answered almost reluctantly at last, so often they had told the tale. We found him in the brook in the field beyond there. The brook? Why, there's not water enough to drown him. He was a determined chap. He lay with his face downwards. He was sick enough for living, choose what cause he had for it. Higgins crept up to Margaret's side, and said, in a weak, piping kind of voice, "It's not John Butcher. He hadn't spunk enough. Sure, it's not John Butcher. Why are they looking this way? Listen. I've a singing in my head and I cannot hear." They pushed the door down carefully upon the stones, and all might see the drowned wretch. His glassy eyes, one half open, staring right upwards towards the sky. Owing to the position on which he had been found lying, his face was swollen and discoloured. Besides, his skin was stained by the water in the brook, which had been used for dyeing purposes. The forepart of his hair was bald, but the hair grew thin and long behind, and every separate lock was a conduit for water. Through all these disfigurements, Margaret recognized John Boucher. It seemed to her so sacrilegious to be peeping into that poor, distorted, agonized face that, by a flash of instinct, she went forwards and softly covered the dead man's countenance with her handkerchief. The eyes that saw her do this followed her as she turned away from her pious office, and were thus led to the place where Nicholas Higgins stood, like one rooted to the spot. The men spoke together, and then one of them came up to Higgins, who would have fain shrunk back into his house. "Higgins, thou knowed him. Thou mun go tell his wife. Do it gently, man, but do it quick, for we canna leave him here long." "I canna go," said Higgins. "Dunna ask me. I canna face her." "Thou knows her best," said the man. "We'n done a deal in bringing him here. Thou take thy share." "I canna do it," said Higgins. "I'm welly felled up in seeing him. We wasn't friends, and now he's dead." "Well, if thou were not, thou were not. Someone mun, though. It's a dree task, but it's a chance, every minute, as she doesn't hear on it in some rougher way nor a person going to make let on bad degrees, as it were."
"Papa, do you go?" said Margaret in a low voice.
"If I could. If I had time to think of what I had better say. But all at once..." Margaret saw that her father was indeed unable. He was trembling from head to foot.
"I will go,"
said she.
"Bless you, miss.
It'll be a kind act, for she's been but a stickly sort of body, I hear, and few hereabouts know much on her." Margaret knocked at the closed door, but there was such a noise, as of many little ill-ordered children, that she could hear no reply. Indeed, she doubted if she was heard, and as every moment of delay made her recoil from her task more and more, she opened the door and went in, shutting it after her, and even unseen by the woman fastening the bolt. Mrs. Boucher was sitting in a rocking chair on the other side of the ill-read-up fireplace. It looked as if the house had been untouched for days by any effort at cleanliness. Margaret said something, she hardly knew what. Her throat and mouth were so dry, and the children's noise completely prevented her from being heard. She tried again.
"How are you, Mrs. Boucher? But very poorly, I'm afraid." "I've chanced to being well," said she querulously. "I'm left alone to manage these childer, and not for to give 'em for to keep 'em quiet. John should na ha' left me, and so poorly." "How long is it since he went away?" "4 days sin'. No one would give him work here, and he's gone on to tramp towards Greenfield. But he might have been back afore this, or send me some word if he getting work. He might—" "Oh, don't blame him," said Margaret. "He felt it deeply, I'm sure. Will to hold thy din, and let me hear the lady speak," addressing herself in no very gentle voice to a little urchin of about a year old. She apologetically continued to Margaret. "He's always mithering me for Daddy and Butty, and I had no butties to give him, and Daddy's away and forgotten us all, I think. He's his father's darling, he is," said she, with a sudden turn of mood, and, dragging the child up to her knee, she began kissing it fondly. Margaret lay her hand on the woman's arm to arrest her attention. Their eyes met. "Poor little fellow,"
said Margaret slowly.
"He was his father's darling." "He is his father's darling,"
said the woman, rising hastily and standing face to face with Margaret. Neither of them spoke for a moment or two. Then Mrs. Butcher began in a low, growling tone, gathering in wildness as she went on.
He is his father's darling, I say. Poor folk can love their children as well as rich. Why dunna you speak? Why dunna you stare at me with your great pitiful eyes? Where's John?
Weak as she was, she shook Margaret to force out an answer.
Oh my God,
said she, understanding the meaning of that tearful look. She sank back into the chair. Margaret took up the child and put him into her arms.
He loved him,
she said.
Ah,
said the woman, shaking her head.
He loved us all. We had someone to love us once. It's long time ago, but when he were in life, and with us, he did love us, he did. He loved this babby mapping the best on us. But he loved me, and I loved him, though I was calling him 5 minutes agone. Are you sure he's dead?
Said she, trying to get up.
If it's only that he's ill and like to die, they may bring him round yet. But I'm an ailing creature myself, and I've been ailing this long time.
But he is dead. He is drowned.
Folk are brought round after they're drowned dead. What was I thinking of, to sit still when I should be stirring myself? Here, with thee, child, with thee. Tak this, tak aught to play with, but don't cry while my heart's breaking. Oh, where's my strength gone to? Oh, John, husband.
Margaret saved her from falling by catching her in her arms. She sat down in the rocking chair and held the woman upon her knees, her head lying on Margaret's shoulder. The other children, clustered together in affright, began to understand the mystery of the scene. But the ideas came slowly, for their brains were dull and languid of perception. They set up such a cry of despair as they guessed the truth that Margaret knew not how to bear it. Johnny's cry was loudest of them all, though he knew not why he cried. Poor little fellow. The mother quivered as she lay in Margaret's arms. Margaret heard a noise at the door.
Open it quick,
said she to the eldest child.
It's bolted. Make no noise. Be very still. Oh, Papa, let them go upstairs very softly and carefully, and perhaps she will not hear them. She's fainted, that's all. As is well for her, poor creature,
said a woman following in the wake-bearers of the dead.
But you're not fit to hold her. Stay, I'll run fetch a pillow, and we'll let her down easy on the floor.
The helpful stranger was a great relief to Margaret. She was evidently a stranger to the house, a newcomer in the district indeed. But she was so kind and thoughtful that Margaret felt she was no longer needed, and that it would be better, perhaps, to set an example of clearing the house, which was filled with idle, if sympathizing, gazers. She looked round for Nicholas Higgins. He was not there. So she spoke to the woman who had taken the lead in placing Mrs. Butcher on the floor.
Can you give all these people a hint that they had better leave in quietness, so that when she comes round, she could only find one or two that she knows about her? Papa, will you speak to the men and get them to go away? She cannot breathe, poor thing, with this crowd about her.
Margaret was kneeling down by Mrs. Butcher and bathing her face with vinegar. But in a few minutes, she was surprised at the gush of fresh air. She looked round and saw a smile pass between her father and the woman.
What is it?
asked she. Only our good friend here, replied her father, hit on a capital expedient for clearing the place.
I bid 'em be gone, and each take a child with 'em, and to mind they were orphans, and their mother a widow. It was who could do most, and the children are sure of a bellyful today, and of kindness too. Does who know how he died? No, said Margaret. I could not tell her all at once. Who mun be told because of the inquest. See, who's coming round? Shall you or I do it? Or Map and your father would be best. No, you,
said Margaret. They waited her perfect recovery in silence. Then the neighbour woman sat down on the floor and took Mrs. Butcher's head and shoulders on her lap.
Neighbour,
Said she.
your man is dead. Guess you how he died?
He were drowned, said Mrs. Butcher, feebly, beginning to cry for the first time at this rough probing of her sorrows.
He were found drowned. He were coming home very hopeless for aught on earth. He thought God could na be harder than men. Mappen not so hard. Mappen as tender as a mother. Mappen tenderer. I'm not saying he did right, and I'm not saying he did wrong. All I say, may neither me nor man ever have his sore heart, or we may do like things. He has left me alone. He has left me alone with all his children,
moaned the widow, less distressed at the manner of death than Margaret expected. But it was of a piece with her helpless character to feel his loss as principally affecting her and her children. Not alone, said Mr. Hale solemnly. Who is with you? Who will take up your cause? The widow opened her eyes wide and looked at the new speaker, of whose presence she had not been aware till then. Who has promised to be a father to the fatherless? Continued he.
But I've getten 6 children, sir, and the eldest not 8 of age. I'm not meaning for to doubt his power, sir, only it needs a deal of trust.
And she began to cry afresh.
Who'll be better able to talk tomorrow, sir,
said the neighbour.
Best comfort now would be for the feel of a child at her heart. I'm sorry they took the babby. I'll go for it,
said Margaret, and in a few minutes she returned, carrying Johnny, his face all smeared with eating, and his hands loaded with treasures in the shape of shells and bits of crystal, and the head of a plaster figure. She placed him on his mother's arms.
There,
said the woman.
Now you go. They'll cry together and comfort together better nor anyone but a child can do. I'll stop with her as long as I'm needed, and if you come tomorrow, you'll have a great deal of wise talk with her that she's not up to today.
As Margaret and her father went slowly up the street, she paused at Higgins' closed door. Shall we go in? Asked her father. I was thinking of him too. They knocked. There was no answer, so they tried the door. It was bolted, but they thought they heard him moving within.
Nicholas,
said Margaret. There was no answer, and they might have gone away believing the house to be empty, if there had not been some accidental fall as of a book within.
Nicholas,
said Margaret again.
It is only us. Won't you let us come in?
No, said he. I spoke as plain as I could about using words when I bolted the door. Let me be this day. Mr. Hale would have urged their desire, but Margaret placed her finger on his lips.
I don't wonder at it, said she. I myself long to be alone. It seems the only thing to do one good after a day like this.
Thank you so very much for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, share, all that jazz. And if you really enjoyed, do subscribe because there is more to come. If you're listening on podcast, please leave a review as it's the easiest way to get in front of as many people as possible, and reading your reviews really, really makes my day. If you want to support the show further, there is a Ko-Fi link just here on screen, or you can find the same link in the description box. But if you want to support the show in a free way, the greatest way that you can currently support me would just be to put the show on while you sleep, or during the day, whenever, on podcast platform, whichever one of your choice, so that I can unlock monetization on the podcast hosting platform that I use. It would truly, truly be life-changing for me if I were able to unblock monetization there. So if you could do that, it would be a great help to me, and more importantly for you, it's free. Once again, thank you so very much for listening. And until next time, bye-bye.